Good evening, members of the public, councillors and staff. I declare this special council meeting of Monday the 7th of October 2024 opened at 7 p.m. I'd like to acknowledge the Noongar people of the Budja, the land that we gather on today. For thousands of years, their connection to country has provided knowledge, guidance, spirituality and life. We pay our respects to this ongoing connection as well as to their elders, past, present and emerging. I will advise members of the gallery that in preparation for compliance with changes to Local Government Act 1995, which is requiring live streaming of meetings, tonight's meeting will be both audio and visually recorded. The lectern has been replaced with a table and chair for improved accessibility for those that will be speaking this evening. A ceiling mounted camera, which you can see on the ceiling just behind the desk, is in place, and while the camera will be on, it is just a test of the equipment tonight ahead of the official launch will be at the OCM in 2 weeks' time in October. There's also been improvements to the speaker system to enhance the gallery's experience. If you're asking a public question or making a statement or deputation to the meeting this evening, I will remind everyone that the question, the deputation or the statement has to be in line with an item on the agenda tonight being a special council meeting. I then request you to take a seat at the table and ask that question or make that statement or deputation. I'll also remind all members of the public that no other visual or audio recording of this meeting may be made by any other means, and that is not allowed. So agenda item number 1 is attendance and apologies. There is one apology from Councillor Rees-Jarrett. There are no other apologies. That brings us to agenda item number 2. Agenda item 2 is public questions time. I declare public question time open at 7:02 p.m. and I'd ask Ms Lisa Brazier of Munnajon to come forward and ask her question.
Good evening, councillors. We're all here tonight because of the councillors' inability to move tonight's item 6.1 award request for tender RFT 07/2027 Hopelands Road at the last OCM. My first question is, has the Shire been in contact with the recommended tenderer to apologise that the motion was not moved by the councillors at the September OCM?
Thank you for your first question, Ms Brazier. I will ask the Director of Corporate Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President. Good evening, Mr Brazier. The only communication with all tenderers has been to request an extension to the validity period of their offer.
Thank you, Director. Ms Brazier, would you like to ask your second question?
I will, possibly, Fraser, you've just answered it. My second question is, has the Shire been in discussions with the recommended tenderer to discuss any implications that may occur and its due delivery date not being met on time because of the delay in signing of the contract by 2 weeks?
Thank you for your second question, Ms Brazier, and again I'd ask the Director of Corporate Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President. And again, the answer is the same. The only comms has been with the tenderers has been to request that extension to the validity period of their offer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. We have only used 2 minutes of public question time. Are there any members of the public who would like to come forward and ask a question? And again, I would reinforce that the question has to be in relation to an item on tonight's agenda. Thank you, Mr Denham. Would you like to come forward? And just for the recording, please state your full name and your location of your suburb where you reside.
And sorry, what was the last bit?
And where you reside. Thank you, Mr Denham.
Bill Denham, Carricup, Byford sort of thing. Rightio. So the first question is, regarding the report provided by the officers, it's got here a minimum level of 6 courts dedicated to netball use. Now, Netball WA came out and had a look, and they were adamant that the minimum level number of courts is 9. So I don't understand where the 6 came from. We're quite happy with 6, but they were adamant that it was 9.
Thank you for your question, Mr Denham. I don't know if Director of Community Engagement would be in a position to answer that question. Or would you like to take on notice, Director, or Director of Infrastructure Services is moving towards the microphone? Director of Infrastructure Services, are you able to provide an answer?
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
President. I will answer in regards to how the project is staged. So the consultant that was engaged to prepare the feasibility study, they did a needs assessment of the facility over a period of time, and they staged it at 6 courts as stage 1 and 9 courts as part of stage 2. So the number of courts was purely based on the needs and demand over a period of time.
Thank you for the answer, Director. Mr. Denham, did you have another or subsequent question to ask? Sorry, Mr. CEO, did you want to?
Perhaps, Mr. President, if I can just add to what the Director mentioned. But you'll see, Mr. Denham, as part of the officer recommendation, that the officers are recommending that, in fact, the advocacy position be for the entire 15 courts at this point in time.
Yep. But in the report it says 6 courts. Also in the report, question 2, also in the report it's got about the covered courts and the problem with structural pylons amongst the courts and the runoff areas. How come, I know it's only a concept, but on page 33 of 41, the actual covered courts are right in the middle of everything, so you've got all your pylons. I would have thought as a concept it would be fairly accurate at the start. I don't understand why it's fully in the middle so that there's more pylons interacting with the players. Wouldn't it be on one of the edges? That's my question.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Denham. Again, Director of Infrastructure Services, are you able to provide a response?
Thank you, Mr. President. So to answer the question, you're correct. It's a very broad conceptual report. So when it comes to detailed design, the locations can change. If relocating it means it can be done cheaper and functionality-wise, it's easier. So the way it's designed now, it's I've taken consideration of access to the pavilion with the cupboard, and the thinking also is that it will probably be used by basketball. If it was at the design time decided to be a multi-purpose court, and also it's designed around the seniors using it rather than the junior players.
So you stick it right in front of the pavilion, as according to the picture that I'm talking about?
Sorry, Mr. Denham, is that your third question? Or is
Oh,
that part of
no, that's just, I just want that picture to me doesn't look right, and it's providing advice to councillors, and that doesn't look right after saying that the pylons, I'm not getting into a debate or anything, I'm just trying to explain my question.
Yep.
So if I can just further add to that, is like that's not set in concrete. That can still change through consultation with the user groups as part of the detailed design. So this is only a concept. So to actually find the final location of that's not decided yet. So that can still be changed through consultation and engagement with the clubs.
Thank you for the answer, Director. Mr. Denham, would you like to ask a third question?
My third question is, Netball WA seemed very vague on what was going on. That was coming from the facilities manager and the general manager. So could I have a report on what officer interaction there's been with Netball WA? Because they didn't know any of this, what was going on. So I don't know who's talking to them, but I wouldn't mind how many times has the Shire officers talked to our governing body for one particular sports is my question.
Thank you for your third question, Mr. Denham. I might ask the Director of Community Engagement whether he is able to provide an answer or whether we take that on notice.
The project manager who was leading the project no longer works for the Shire, so we'll be able to follow up with records relating to the project to provide a fulsome response to Mr. Denham.
I realise that it's a question on notice.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr. Denham, for your questions. I appreciate your questions tonight. Is there anyone else from the gallery who'd like to come forward and ask a question? That being the case, I declare public question time closed at 7:09 p.m. That brings us on to agenda item number 3, which is public statement time. I open public statement time now at 7:10 p.m. and would ask Ms Lisa Brazier to come forward and make her statement.
Lisa Brazier, Mundajong. Good evening, councillors. I make this statement tonight in regards to why we are here at a special council meeting, but do acknowledge that there are further 2 items of business that have been placed on the agenda. Councillors, as prescribed by the Act, one of your roles is to participate in decision-making processes at meetings. For not one of you to move item 6.1 on tonight's agenda at the previous OCM is an extremely poor reflection on each and every one of you, not to mention the reputational damage you are doing to the Shire. The values, characteristics and commitments that are expected of a Shire councillor include the commitment to attend meetings and to be fully prepared to participate in decision-making processes. This did not happen at the September OCM for this agenda item, and what did occur was the investment of each of you in debate on the previous agenda item, being the draft master plan for Lot 500 Lampier Drive, and your inability to accept how your fellow councillors debated and the voting outcome. It is very obvious around the table that people are strategically voting to hopefully secure their seats at the table for the next election. There are grudges being held against each other, and when things are not going your way, there is too much time being taken to work out people's next moves rather than what is on the agenda. I've heard some of the reasons why councillors did not move the motion, which were they were still on the previous agenda item, it was not their ward, it's been difficult being on council, it's not easy, and the President moved too quickly. Councillors, none of these excuses are valid. You have one role, and that is to be fully prepared to participate in the decision-making processes. That would mean that you would need to have read the entire agenda, have a full understanding of each and every item. Any questions that you may have had on an agenda item would have been clarified at the Q&A session. I'd be so bold as to recommend that you make notes throughout your agenda in advance on how you intend to debate and possibly vote. As to the President moving too quickly, I was at the September OCM and the alternate motion was lost, and the office recommendation was subsequently carried unanimously. At this point in time, the Minute Secretary recorded the votes, and then the President read the next item of business. Once the vote had been taken, it is at that point, councillors, you need to move on to the next item of business, regardless of the outcome or your thoughts on the debate. For no one to have moved this item, especially as it was for roads, the number one issue that residents and ratepayers complain about, and you all refer to in debate, is dumbfounding. In another debate, you have compared yourselves to being similar to ASX directors. Well, many ASX directors are selected due to skill set and experience by their fellow board members. You councillors are elected due to popularity and not necessarily skill set. It is for this reason that you are required to do compulsory training, of which, if the Shire's Councillor Training and Continuing Professional Development Report 2023-2024 is up to date, one of you will cease to receive your sitting fees on the 17th of October, and one of you has done no training to date. Perhaps if they had, they would have a better understanding of their role, meeting procedures and its importance. Perth is a very small place, and word gets around in the construction industry quickly. I'd like you to reflect on your actions and the messaging you have sent to that industry and how we as a Shire go about our business, and ask yourselves, if those around the table cannot move a simple motion, why would I invest my time, money and effort in tendering or working with the Shire? We're heading towards a state and federal election. You are busy spruiking, sorry, that's not spelt correctly, the advocacy strategy to all the upcoming candidates and sitting members. The process is this, councillors. Those candidates and members then go back to their respective party to pitch our wants against the other 136 LGA's wants? And when the question is raised, are SJ capable of delivering? The answer would potentially be unsure. The councillors did not move a motion on roads rehabilitation at an OCM, then needed to call a special council meeting for it to be dealt with no alteration to the original motion. Heaven forbid if all that we can achieve is a $1 million splash park. No, sorry, we have not even been able to deliver that. So our track record is not the best, and your actions potentially do not help it. Councillors, whilst you're all continuing to play games around the table between each other, you are losing sight of who the real competitors are, the other LGAs. The Shire was recently nominated by one of the industry's most significant housing and development players for the Local Government Authority of the Year Award at the 2004 Urban Development Institution of Australia WA Awards, which we won. This win can be attributed to the long, hard work of Andrew Trossick and his department. The Shire was the inaugural winner, and such awards lead to promoting us in a positive light and to a greater audience. Councillors, I appreciate most of you are PAYEs and do not fully understand the costs of running a business and how development works. However, you need to understand the significance of that award and where we have come from over the past 20 years, where we are moving to, the opportunities that we have, and the need to attract state and federal funding. And you play the final piece in that to the way that you conduct yourselves at this table. I sincerely trust that each and every one of you has apologised to the directors and staff that firstly put all the work to bring that agenda item to the September OCM, and to everybody involved who has fronted up again this evening. And please do not brush this off by saying, oh, well, it's okay because there are 2 other agenda items we need to deal with. It is not all right. You all chose to put your hand up to be councillors. You were supported and elected by residents and ratepayers of the Shire who thought you were capable of doing the job. Please stop playing games around the table, start acting professionally, do your training, understand your roles, support your officers, and let's draw a line in the sand and try and look at being a little bit more cohesive at the table. You do not have to like each other. You do not have to agree with each other. That is the wonderful thing about democracy in Australia. But you need to show respect to each other when debating on voting outcomes, and especially when out in the public arena. And in case you don't understand what that looks like, when you're out in public, you acknowledge your fellow councillors. A simple good morning councillor is all that is needed, but to ignore them is rude. It is noticed by the public. It is sending the wrong message as to who we are as a Shire, how we operate, and what we stand for. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement, Ms Brazier. Are there any other members of the gallery who'd like to come forward and make a statement in relation to any of the agenda items on this evening's meeting? Mr Denham.
My statement's nowhere
Sorry,
near...
Sorry, Mr Denham, just for...
Bill Denham,
Thank you.
Carrick-up.
Thanks.
Right, so mine's nowhere as organised as the last statement. Thanks to Libby Medham and Shane Love for coming out, taking the time to come out and have a look at SJ. I'm not allowed to mention names, am I, Mr CEO? So there's someone that's come back that used to work for us when we were councillors, and she's very good, so welcome to her. Rightio, so Netball WA could only make the Tuesday afternoon time slot because I tried to get them there for the Thursday with the Liberals, etc., and they sort of branded our courts to be the worst in WA, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it's easier to advocate for them, but they are pretty run down. And anyone that attended would agree. To do the courts, the 4 courts up over there, is going to cost more than $1.5 million to do them properly, and then you've got the canteen and the toilets, etc. The idea of 15 courts is a great idea because that would allow basketball, futsal's apparently a new one, and the newest sport is one called pickleball. I don't know whether you councillors know what pickleball is, but Google it. That is taking off now. Can we stop calling this a netball facility? Because if we're going for 15 courts, I don't know what you name it, but it's not a netball facility because everyone would be welcome. But those other sports could be incorporated up there, and I think it would be easier to advocate. Pickleball's a big one. So that's one point. The runoff. Now, you know how water is our main problem up there at Keenan Street. I worked out 110 metres by 100 metres will give you 11 million litres of runoff water. Now, that's not contaminated, so that leaves it open for recharge or whatever, because it's not contaminated by like a car park and stuff, but there is 11 million litres of water. That's a side benefit just to having that large area that people might not have realised. On one of the pages of the report, it's got perceived shortfall. We're going to try and do spring netball through demand this year. We normally only do winter netball, and the ladies have decided to do spring netball due to demand. Now, it's already booked out, and adults having been included, so they're doing walking netball as well, but they've had to limit their number of teams due to the lighting and everything, but it's already booked out, so we're capping the numbers, so the perceived shortfall isn't perceived, it's definitely there. The other example of netball courts, Success Netball, I don't know whether any councillors, officers have heard, Success Netball didn't even exist. They put 15 courts down there and they're fully utilised now. About 7 or 8 years later, they're fully utilised, 15 courts. So you build it and they'll come. Because I think the more we use the facility, the less vandalism, you know, the more bookings you get for everything. I think it would be a positive thing to do the 15 courts. There's so many advantages all round. Thank you.
Mr Denham, thank you very much for your statement, and on behalf of Council, I'd like to thank you and your association for making yourselves available. We've had the advocacy with the two of the parties down here, so thank you very much. That certainly makes our job for advocacy a lot easier when we have people like you that are prepared to come forward and talk directly to the politicians about the need for sports in the area, so thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the gallery who'd like to come forward and make a statement? Thank you, Mr Atwell.
David Atwell, 52 Adams Street, Mundijong. I was just going to add to Mr Denham's remarks. I think what's been lost with especially the Kerners Street precinct is a kick-on effect. A lot of people are very short-sighted and only are purely locked into what is going to happen now. As Mr Denham said, you give people something to do and they'll do it. That's where we've lost a lot of momentum in this whole venture, and it doesn't necessarily have to be sport. It could be community activities and all sorts, playgrounds and all this sort of thing. If you don't give anyone something to do, they're not going to do it. If you give it to them, the kick-on effect is amazing, and as Bill said, from nothing to 15 courts is a pretty amazing sort of an effort. And I'm sure there's heaps and heaps of other sports that, I don't know, pickle sport, I have pickles on my lunch, but whatever pickle sport is, I have no idea. But there are literally thousands of sports that can be played on different types of courts. A lot can be played on courts, as Bill mentioned, similar courts. So it's not really a matter of building everything individually for everyone, but it's a matter of trying to get as much as we can out to the people that we can before we lose space and all this stuff, and we don't get the money to get it. You've got to get forward, and this activity's taken a long time, as we all probably well know. But get the activity moving, get other sports involved, and you'll find that eventually it will really become a great community place, and will actually improve the health and lifestyles of all the community. Thank you.
Thank you also for your statement, Mr Atwell, and for those who don't know, Mr Atwell was the previous Deputy Shire President, so I acknowledge the work that you've done as well in advocacy, so thank you, Mr Atwell. That being the case, there's no more public statements. I declare public statement time closed at 7:24 p.m. That brings to agenda item number 4, which is petitions and deputations, which there are nil. Agenda item number 5 is declaration of councillors and officers' interest. I do have one disclosure of interest, and that is from Councillor Morgan Bias. Councillor Bias wishes to declare an interest in agenda item or advocacy items tonight, which specifically is the Kiernan Park, which is agenda item 6.3. And the reason, or that's the impartiality interest, and the reason that Councillor Bias has declared that, and the extent of his interest, is that he is a candidate in the 2025 state government election. There are no other councillors or officers' interests. That brings us on to agenda item 6.1. Agenda item 6.1 is award request for tender RFT 07-2024 Hopeland Road A and B rehabilitation works. Is there a councillor who'd like to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Bias. That's the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Bias. Is there a councillor? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us on to agenda item 6.2. Agenda item 6.2 is award request for tender RFT 09-2024 Briggs Park Pump Track Design and Construct. Is there a councillor who is happy to move a motion in regards to this agenda item? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is that the officer's recommendation?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there a councillor who's happy to second the motion? Thank you, Councillor Mack. Is there anyone who's opposed to the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us on to agenda item 6.3. Agenda item 6.3 is Kiernan Park Stage 1C Netball Courts Concept Plan. Is there a councillor who's happy to move a motion in regards to this item? Councillor Bias, would you like to move the officer's recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Bias. Is there a councillor who's happy to second? Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Is there anyone who's opposed to this motion?
Not opposed, but I do have a question, if I may.
Certainly, Councillor Mack.
This obviously is a part of 1C of the master plan. Given that we are also advocating for 1B, what do we have implicated that would suggest that 1B, we suggest the order of which it is done? So I guess my question is, if we were to get funding for 1C and we haven't had it for 1B, are we then committed to providing 1C before 1B?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Mack. Mr CEO, are you happy to provide an answer?
Thank you, Mr President. Happy to. Our advocacy requests are structured to specific projects, so it's not a request of $40 million towards the next stage of Kiernan Park, whatever that might be. It's a request for $40 million for netball courts or $12.5 million for the BMX relocation. So that's what our requests are, and that's what individual parties will have the option to pick up. And if they form government and create government after the election, and those election commitments are then honoured, there may be an opportunity to negotiate that, but they may have chosen that particular advocacy position for a particular reason. So if that answers your question.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Councillor Mack, does that answer your question, or have you got a supplementary question?
It does, and I'd probably just raise as a following question. And so, could we find ourselves in a position where BMX again gets bumped down the pecking order if funding was approved for 1C and not from 1B from a government?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Mack. Mr CEO, are you happy to provide an answer?
Absolutely. It'll be what the individual parties choose to pick up as their election advocacy opportunities, and they might not think that the relocation of BMX is a high priority. They might think netball courts are. So that's the individual choice of individual parties, and if they form government in that space.
Councillor Mack, did you have another question? Does that?
No, I'm just taking a moment just to get my thoughts around that, and I don't necessarily want to oppose this, but I do want to make some security around ensuring BMX doesn't get bumped. We've heard from BMX on a number of occasions that they've been, they feel they've been pushed back and back over the last 20 years. So I'm not sure if I can perhaps seek some guidance from any of the directors, if we can perhaps put something in which can give some assurity to 1B.
Thank you for your question. If I could ask a question before I think the Director of Community Engagement wanted to respond. If I can ask a question which will obviously assist me but may also assist other councillors, is for advocacy for the state and federal election, the priority after roads is the Serpentine Jarrahdale Recreation Centre. A key part of that is a relocation of BMX. Is that correct? And with the question that Councillor Mack has posed, does the fact that we need to move BMX for the redevelopment of the SJ Rec Centre, does that go to some way to address or answer Councillor Mack's question, I guess is my point. I don't know if you can assist with that, Mr CEO, or...
Mr President, if you'd like me to, I guess Councillor Mack's raising a good point about, should the council have a priority list in terms of which stage of Keenan Park is requested to go next, is essentially what I think Councillor Mack's asking. The election advocacy requests are not structured in that way. If that, at this point in time, if that's what the council wanted to do or had a mind to do tonight, that would provide some direction. However, in saying that, there are options which we're happy to, which council's resolved. The ops officers will work with the BMX club on coming back to council with relocation options of the BMX track to Keenan Park, which might be in a staged manner, and that might provide a way forward there, regardless if it isn't picked up by any particular party as part of the advocacy position.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Director of Community Engagement, did you want to add anything to that, or you're happy to?
I think the CEO's covered the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Matt, did you want to ask another question?
No, that's... Look, if staff believe they've got it in hand, then happy.
Thank you. I'll call again. We've got a mover and a seconder. Is there anyone opposed to the officer's recommendation as moved and seconded? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us on to agenda item 6.4, which is appointment of proxy voting delegate for the 2024 West Australian Local Government Association Annual General Meeting. Mr CEO, I understand there are 2 nominations received.
Thanks, Mr President. Yes, as outlined in the report, we have received 2 nominations, Councillor Mazzini and Councillor Mack, to be Councillor Duggan's additional proxy because she's not able to attend. So if that's still to continue, Mr President, I would probably suggest that you might like to call for any further nominations, and then we can conduct a ballot if that's what the council would like to do.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Are there any other councillors who would like to be considered?
A question, if I may.
Yes, Councillor Bishop.
It's my understanding that Councillor Mack is the proxy delegate for your position, Mr President. Is there any implications, should he be supported, to also be the proxy delegate for Councillor Duggan?
It's a very good question. I suppose the question is if something happens to me, which hopefully it doesn't, but perhaps the Director of Corporate Services, I got it right this time, Corporate Services could provide an answer in regards to that. If Councillor Mack was proxy for the Deputy President and the President, and if something happened to me, what would happen?
Thank you, Mr President, for the easy questions. I really have nothing more to add than your observation that it's fine unless something happens to you.
I don't know why members of the gallery are smiling. So where to from here? I will again call if anyone else would like to nominate. At the moment we do have Councillor Mazzini and Councillor Mack as the 2 nominees. Director of Corporate Services, I believe that there's no issues with those 2 nominees. I've certainly got all intents and purposes to attend there, unless something unforeseeable was to happen. But are there any other councillors who would like to make a nomination? Councillor Box.
Not a nomination, but a question, if I may, probably through to the Director again. Is there a way that Council can word its motion? Do the proxies need to be connected to one of the delegates, or can we have a situation where we have the vote and both are effectively the delegate, first delegate and second delegate, so that in the instance where something were to happen, then there is that extra pool of proxies to draw on, thereby covering all situations?
Can we just ask the question if something could happen, not were to happen? Director, are you happy to answer that question?
Yeah, I think that's an eminent solution.
Thank you, Director. So then I'd be happy for, if there's no other nominees, for the two people to be put on the ballot, and I might need some assistance, Mr. CEO, about wording in terms of if one person got one vote, then they're the delegate, the first delegate or proxy delegate, and the second person's a second proxy delegate, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? So whoever gets the most votes...
I'm sure the Director of Corporate Services has got some wording in mind
Thank you.
to adequately address the suggestion, Mr. President, and he's got a chance to, while we do the ballot, to work on the wording, and we can go from there.
Okay, thank you. So at this time we've got Councillor Courtney Mazzini and Councillor Shane Mack as the two nominees. So we need to now conduct a ballot to see who's number one and who's number two. Well, that's... So, Mr. CEO, this is just for the positioning on the ballot?
That's correct, Mr. President. So the first name on the ballot will be Councillor Mazzini. The second name on the ballot, process will go on, is Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. I am happy if the two nominees would like to make a pitch as to why fellow councillors should support their nomination, and if so, I would offer the opportunity to Councillor Mazzini first, because you're number one on the ballot. Would you like to take up that opportunity?
I will keep this very brief, Mr. President. Thank you. I'm attending the Wagga conference, so I just thought it might be something interesting, and I'd enjoy doing being the proxy for this. Some of the items on the agenda are really interesting, but yeah, as I said, I was already attending, so I thought I'd just put my name in the hat. I thank everyone for the effort that they've gone through for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Councillor Mack, would you like to take up the same opportunity I availed to Councillor Mazzini? Would you like to speak for up to 2 minutes, on your candidacy or your nomination?
Yeah, thank you. I also obviously nominated as a proxy for yourself, because I did have an interest if the opportunity would arise to come as the voting delegate. Having had a look over the agenda as well, I do think there's a couple of items that are coming up on the agenda, in particular around asbestos in the Shires, and with the other one was around accessibility and advocacy for accessibility, which were two topics on the agenda that I have a particular interest in and would like to attend.
Thank you, Councillor Mack. We'll just wait now for the ballots to be drawn up, and then Mr CEO will call councillors to go and vote.
Mr President, there's some wording been added there to a point 2 to pick up the suggestion before, and that is that the second person in the process could actually be either the second proxy for yourself or Councillor Duggan. So the first person would be who the vote is, and the second person could either be the second proxy for yourself or Councillor Duggan, if the council was happy with that wording.
Thank you, Mr CEO. We're just waiting for the ballots to be drawn up, are we?
So, Mr President, for the new councillors who haven't had the privilege of going through an election before, the ballots will be, I'll ask you to come forward, I'll sign the back of the ballot paper, and then you'll be asked to go across to the little blue enclave and do the secret ballot voting. And, oh no, they need to be signed first, Claire. Oh. Claire, they should be signed first. Sorry. And then put your vote into the voting box. So we'll just go around the table. So Councillor Mazzini, would you like to come forward first and get your ballot? Councillor Mack, would you like to come forward and get yours? Councillor Bishop, would you like to take this out? President Coles, would you like to come forward and have your ballot? Thank you. Councillor Duggan, would you like to come forward and take your ballot, please? Thank you. Read the legislation. Councillor Bias. Mr President, there were 4 votes received for Councillor Mazzini and 2 votes for Councillor Mack.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr CEO. So that being the case, then there'll be a motion that nominates Councillor Mazzini as Councillor Duggan's first proxy voting delegate, and then nominates Councillor Mack as President Coles or Councillor Duggan's second proxy delegate to the West Australian Local Government Association Annual General Meeting. That being the case, is there a councillor who is happy to move that motion? Thank you, Councillor Bias. Is there a councillor who's happy to second? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there anyone opposed? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to agenda item number 7, which is motions of notice which have been given, which is nil. Agenda item number 8 is urgent business, which is nil, and agenda item number 9 is closure. I declare the meeting closed at 7:48 p.m. and thank the members of the public for their attendance tonight. Thank staff and thank councillors. Good evening. Drive safely.